I want to bring on with me weekly guest, Frank Gaffney, president of the Center for Security Policy. Go to securefreedom.org, counterjihad.com. He's everywhere, all over the internet. And Frank, of course, we're going to get to national security, foreign policy issues per usual. But I know you take an active hand in scouting and recruiting some of these candidates that end up running from the sort of anti-establishment wing of the Republican Party. And do you have any thoughts on Al's comments there? I know you got a chance to hear some of them. I thought it was very interesting because it is. In some ways, I'm very happy that President Trump has moved some of these values forward on the right side of the aisle. But I do see a lot of clinging to the establishment in the Republican Party. So who's right?
Well, just for the record, we don't play any role at all in picking candidates. We're not a political organization, Alex, but we certainly take an interest in, the quality of these candidates, and are hopeful that there will be sort of a continuous loop feed.
Apologize for
what Al just said.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's important to say as a citizen, we're certainly very concerned about all this.
Yeah, and that's all I meant by that. I didn't imply that Frank was actually
what we could get.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is a continuous loop feed of what Al just said into Paul Ryan's office and that of the rest of the Republican leadership, and for that matter, the Republican, caucus in the House, because they are poised right now to do exactly the things he's warning them about in unimaginable ways, pouring money down rat holes with this so-called omnibus bill. And there will be, I believe, hell to pay with precisely the sorts of people that Al represents. And I think he speaks for so many of us who are alienated from the establishment Republicans and will not turn out to vote for them or their candidates come November. And that will set up, as you know so well, and you've been warning about it for a long time, Alex, that will set up the impeachment of the president of the United States. That's when correct. Nancy Pelosi or somebody like her holds the gavel in this House again.
Yeah, and I do find it amazing how the Republican establishment is clinging to things that are not turning out voters. I mean, I understand that stuff
alienating voters.
Yes, yeah, it's the exact opposite. You're exactly right.
They're driving them away.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's the thing, which is that, and I mentioned this with the trade debate, which is here's the issue with Trump putting tariffs on a lot of the people in the National Review crowd, which I agree with more often than not, though. For some reason, I always find myself mentioning them when we disagree. They want to have this debate like we're in some sort of economics classroom on the merits of free trade when it comes to the economy, and that's actually a good debate. But then they largely ignore the fact that it is unassailably going to be helpful for our national security and foreign policy, and not to mention it's going to turn out more voters for the right side of the aisle for conservative candidates. And yet we only focus on some of these debates on just purely the economic element of it, which, by the way, I think the economics do favor Trump's agenda. But things like this is that the debate has gone so off the rails, and I do think it's a follow the money situation. I do think a lot of the people who are pushing some of these old dog Republican policies know they don't really work. They're just on the take from someone, or as we'll talk about next hour with Peter Schweitzer, their family or friends are on the take, and that's disheartening.
Yeah. Look, I barely escaped with my life through about 4 or 5 economics classes in my undergraduate graduate education, Alex, so I'm not going to address the economics of this, but I do think what helpfully has been done by the president, simply by bringing forward these tariff initiatives and the debates that are flowing from them, is to frame what is desperately needed, which is a recognition of the fact that we are being subjected to economic warfare.
That's right.
By a whole host of other countries, some of whom are nominal allies, others of whom are unmistakably adversaries of ours. And I think we've got to start reckoning with that reality, and whether the best way to do it is with tariffs, or whether it's tariffs and reform of the institutions these people are abusing, like the World Trade Organization, or these multilateral negotiations and agreements that have come from them. I mean, I'm open to any of it, but I do think that we have to understand that notably the Communist Chinese have, I think we've talked about this before, since 1999, been engaged in something they have described as unrestricted warfare against the United States. And that has included a variety of, currency manipulations and technology thefts and expropriations of companies that are critical to the leading edge of technology in the future. And, oh, by the way, preparing for other kinds of warfare against us as well, some of it financed by our investments. This is the sort of thing that I think Donald Trump is very helpfully addressing, and we need a lot more conversation about it. I want to say a specific shout out to Dr. Peter Navarro, the chairman of his National Trade Council, who gets this completely, and I think will be a very important force in those debates going forward.
Yeah, I might not be helping him on the inside when I say that he might be my favorite guy in the inner circle right now.
Very smart fellow, and we need him there for sure.
Very smart guy, very serious guy, but also someone who understands what we talk about on this show and at Breitbart and with your websites, Frank. Okay, so let's go around the world and talk about some of the big news that's out there. And I kind of teased it earlier. I'm going to spend an hour with Peter Schweitzer later today about his book.
Great guy. Give him my best.
I will do exactly that, Secret Empires. But the main thing is he describes a very intricate and clever way that people have been able to buy influence from American politicians, essentially through family members. And basically, we have a rule. I'm going to ask Peter this exact question, Frank, but we have a rule that we don't hire family members of foreign, royal families or foreign people in foreign governments. We don't hire them into our government. But basically, we allow that our family members of the people in our ruling class, they can get hired by foreign governments or other foreign entities like that. It is clearly an opportunity for massive hypocrisy, but also an opportunity for massive corruption and cronyism. Yeah. And I want to know if you have any thoughts on that.
I haven't had a chance to look at Peter's latest book. I am a huge admirer of his, and I think he does extraordinarily important, really path-breaking work, particularly in this nexus of finance and politics and policy. And in this regard, I suspect he's really on to something important, because I think if you do your research and analysis of who's on whose payroll, family members, former staffers, business associates, what have you, you'll see that there is, in fact, this cottage industry in the swamp that is absolutely exercising influence on policy. And it's a form of corruption, to be sure. But to my way of thinking, Alex, again, sort of being a policy-focused person, the really concerning thing is these foreign governments or these foreign companies that are tied to these foreign governments or these foreign companies that have, got cronies of various people in positions in all kinds of governments around the world are exercising undue influence. And, going back to Al's call, are I'm afraid, negating the desires and the expectations of the people who actually vote in the expectation that they'll actually be represented in Washington. And that's got to be called out, and I'm so delighted that Peter's doing it and that you're giving him a shot at talking to your audience about it. I think this is a really important topic.
Yeah, I think it's a huge topic. Okay, Frank, a couple other things that I must bring to your attention right now. And one thing that I do want to get to right off the bat is Trump is teasing the Iran deal decision. He's saying that you'll see. Are you into this? Are you confident what is going to happen here?
I think the president wants to get out of this Obama bomb deal, as I call it.
I think so too, but are you surprised at how difficult?
And he knows that it needs to be undone, and I think he's working towards that. I think he's serious about doing that. He needs people around him.
That's right.
We talk about this a lot. Unlike H.R. McMaster, who desperately wants to keep this thing going, his national security advisor, that guy has got to go. And we need people who will help the president accomplish what he wants to do here, which is to put once again in place the kind of sanctions on Iran and other mechanisms for restraining its growing and unfortunately unchecked ambitions to dominate its region and threaten the rest of us.
So, Frank, Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, is in Washington. He met with the president yesterday. He's the heir apparent in Saudi Arabia, and he does seem to be trying to modernize and westernize at a relatively quick clip. But these things always make you suspicious in some ways. But I'm pretty encouraged by what I'm seeing. But you're much more of the expert in this regard. What do you think of their meeting yesterday and what's actually happening?
Look, I know there are a lot of people in this town who are very keen on Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he's known. I hope he's the real deal. I am deeply suspicious. And let me just say, for his internal purposes, I gather, but it has external repercussions as well. He is claiming that Saudi Arabia, prior to 1979, was a place that practiced what he calls moderate Islam. That's simply not true.
No, absolutely not.
I think it's true that it became much more aggressively supporting global jihad after an incident in mosques in Mecca, but I think in 1979. But the reality is, if a guy is approaching you and saying something that is simply not so, I think you have to be a little bit careful about whatever else he may be telling you. And much as I hope that we will see moderation in specifically those who are promoting Sharia supremacism, and there are a lot of them in Saudi Arabia, there is unfortunately reason to be skeptical that he'll pull it off or that he'll even survive the effort to do it. And we have to keep our guard up about Sharia supremacy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think we can I guess trust but verify might be the expression. In this case, I think there's something very encouraging here, but I think that we definitely need to keep our head on a swivel in this regard. And I do think that this Saudi charm offensive, Frank, we can't forget about the past also, and the very recent past in this case.
They have an interest in dealing with Iran, and for that moment, at least, they're going to be on better behavior with respect to us and Israel, and,
yes.
and that's something we should capitalize on. But I think we have to be clear that there has to be real reform there, not just good rhetoric.
Yeah, and last thing I want to bring up with you today, that Xi Jinping is challenging President Trump and Taiwan, saying that China will not give up a single inch of land. I mentioned this with you so often on the show. These issues with China still seem to keep getting pushed further and further onto the back burner. They're making highly aggressive moves all around the world. They're being pretty naked about it at this point in time, yet not fogging a mirror when it comes to the establishment media's coverage of what's going on around the world. Your thoughts, Frank?
I had the privilege of speaking at the Conservative Political Action Conference a month ago, Alex, and said very explicitly, I believe that China is at war with us. As I say, it's been an unrestricted warfare, mostly taking the form of economic operations against us. But increasingly, as you say, they are now ramping up military capacity to wage the old-fashioned kind of war against us, and they're positioning themselves around the world in strategic choke points, in controlling continents even. This One Belt, One Road operation is the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere of Imperial Japan on steroids. And we keep, as you say, looking the other way or thinking there are partners, or as long as we just trade with them, all will be well. I fear this is going to go badly, Alex, and we had best be alive to that danger. Peter Navarro is, and I think the rest of us need to be as well.
Yeah, I think the rest of us do as well. And I think also, if you're at all a student of even recent history, you'll know that China does challenge us to stand up to them. It's part of their MO. It's part of how they do business. And I see these moves as basically them trying to be the bully in the schoolyard and challenging us to stand up to the bully. I think that's what's happening here. And this is not one where we can cook up in a think tank with Paul Ryan some sort of a new trade policy that's going to back these guys down.
Right. This is full on competition at best, and again, setting the predicate for war. By the way,
Sure.
Peter Navarro contributed to a book called Warning Order, which is available for free at securefreedom.org. I commend it to your audience. It's downloadable,
Wonderful.
and it's a terrific read about the various ways in which China is competing with us and threatening us increasingly.
Thanks, Frank Gaffney. Go to securefreedom.org and counterjihad.com. We'll talk to you next week. President of the Center for Security Policy. I'm Alex Marlow. You're listening to Breitbart News Daily.